Okay, good evening, everybody. My name is Phil Meir. I am the program manager with the American Nurses Association of New York. This session is being recorded. Please keep yourselves muted at all times during the webinar presentation. If you have any questions, please submit all your questions via chat. I will read the questions to Dr. O'Flaherty myself after the presentation is complete. It's with great pleasure for me to introduce our speaker today, who's going to speak on the topic of resilience. Dr. Deidre O'Flaherty has over 30 years of clinical, academic, research, and leadership experience in emergency, trauma, perioperative, and orthopedic nursing, with publications, presentations, and research in resilience, structural empowerment, engagement, and orthopedic nursing. Her ANCC certifications include Nursing Executive Advanced, Adult Nurse Practitioner, and Orthopedic Nursing. She serves as a president of the Alpha Phi chapter of Sigma Theta Tau. She is the international recipient of the 2020 ANA New York Mentorship Award, New York Academy of Medicine Fellow of 2020 and 2021, and the Fellow of the Faculty of Nurse and Midwifery Royal College of Surgeons of Ireland. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce our speaker, Dr. Deidre O'Flaherty.
Thank you. Thanks for that great introduction. And it really is a pleasure to be here with you this afternoon to speak about a topic that's really near and dear to my heart. It's resilience, and it's certainly a topic that we have all heard very much about over the past few years, actually. Really since COVID, I think it's very much so the buzzword. So what I plan to do is to really talk about the concept of resilience. I'm going to describe some interventions that are effective at building resilience and recovery and wellness. And my goal is to share some tools that can be used to establish a foundation of resilience. So let me go ahead and start with actually a definition of resilience. And what it is the ability to bounce back quickly from different situations and to be able to remain agile and effective in a stressful situation. I'll start with a review of the literature just to keep us on track. And resilience, it's a concept that has been applied to research and practice and in nearly every possible area of life and academia, with publications in science, sociology, psychology, nursing and medicine. Our lit review shows us that early research took place, and it was really studies that were focused on children and how they thrived despite being in less than optimal experiences. And lately, nursing has been a focus for studies and interventions that we have found can foster resilience, particularly in the workplace. What we've also discovered is that resilience can be learned or developed. I first got interested in the concept of resilience when I was in my doctoral program, and I actually was one of the first concepts that we analyzed. And since then, Mary Joy Garcia, who was a classmate of mine and in the cohort that I was in, we've worked very much so on developing more research and resilience and really spending time looking at it in terms of its impact in nursing. What we've discovered is, it's dynamic. It truly a dynamic process, and where not only heredity, but environmental factors, and they're mediated by mindfulness and coping. I'll next go to a schematic diagram, and I think this is easy just to look at in terms of the concept. Because it describes what is the antecedent or what comes before, and typically it originates from an adverse event that's either caused by trauma or caused by stress. And as I mentioned, individuals have inherent protective factors, and that's what makes up the concept's attributes, which are self-efficacy, coping, hope, and rebounding. And as individuals are able to cope and to cope effectively after, possibly a traumatic event, the person then acquires or develops personal control and over the situation. they're able to make psychological adjustments and eventually find personal growth subsequent or as a consequence of the event itself. So speaking of antecedents, we are faced with a lot of things lately. There certainly is domestic and international instability. We are in the midst of changing dynamics in healthcare. Our workplace environment itself, it can be challenging. Daily, it can be stressful. Staff can hurdle from one traumatic experience to another and to immediately go from one situation to another without even a moment to sort of recoup, maybe just to take a deep breath. Varying levels of acuity of patients and situations. There's also violence, and not only in our external environment, but sometimes in our work environment, and point of safety and point of care safety threats are becoming more commonplace in healthcare settings. We are certainly seeing an upsurge in behavioral health patients, and we're seeing that in acute care settings. There's also the concept of new technology and the responsibilities that come with that, and then care protocols that can sometimes cause you to feel a little bit isolated, really in a crowd, when you are really so involved in technology. Needless to say, COVID, we are really in the aftermath of that now, where we were, I think somebody described it as a tsunami of patients during COVID, and we're now sort of on the downstream of that, but also still a stressful time. In terms of an additional historical concept, I think the perspective that's put forward here by Viktor Frankl is very, very poignant. We who lived in concentration camps can remember the men who walked through their huts comforting others, giving away their last piece of bread. They offer sufficient proof that everything can be taken from a man but one thing: to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way. So it's really about one's perspective. This is an interesting, this is actually from the New Yorker magazine. This came out a couple of years ago, and what it was an interesting article, and it really, she spent a lot of time talking about the concepts of Bonanno, and his work was quoted in the article, and he spent several years. He is talking about traumatic events and looking at dealing with adversity, and from that, really looking at how resilience can be taught. I thought that this is really a good visual for a New Yorker in particular, because we really just tend to forge ahead. They don't call it a New York Minute for nothing, but we constantly move forward. But this is really with the goal to rebound, with the goal to develop self-efficacy, to cope, and to hope, and just to move on forward. So, resilience traits. Throughout time, we've recognized that there are some traits of resilience and there are some protective factors. And how do people deal with difficult events that change their lives? Ernest Hemingway said, "The world breaks everyone, and afterward, many are strong at the broken places." You think about Helen Keller. When one door of happiness closes, another opens, but often we look so long at the closed door that we do not see the one which has been opened for us. I wept because I had no shoes until I met a man who had no feet. And Oscar Wilde, one of my favorites. Man is least himself when he talks in his own person. Give him a mask and he will tell you the truth. So these are all examples of what can be very challenging life experiences. And many people react to circumstances in different ways, sometimes with a flood of emotions, sometimes with a sense of uncertainty. Yet, over time, generally people adapt very well to the life-changing situations. And what enables them to do so? Resilience. It's an ongoing process. It requires time and effort, and it engages people in taking steps, learning how to cope, how to rebound, how to develop hope, and move forward for good outcomes. We believe you can, and you are halfway there. This is a quote from Theodore Roosevelt. He was the 26th president of the United States from 1901 to 1909. And this quote is from the American Ideals in Education, a speech that was given in 1910. And I see a correlation to the work that we do as caregivers. I think it's interesting because he was sickly as a child. He had debilitating asthma. So he says here that nothing in this world is worth having or worth doing unless it means effort, pain, difficulty. No kind of life is worth leading if it's always an easy life. I know that your life is hard. I know that your work is hard, and hardest of all for those of you who have the highest trained consciences and who therefore feel always how much you ought to do. I know your work is hard, and that is why I congratulate you with all my heart. I never in my life envied a human being who led an easy life. I've envied a great many people who led difficult lives and led them well. And I truly feel that this is something that correlates and resounds with what, as nurses or anybody really in healthcare, life in general, actually, in the aftermath of COVID, it resonates with me. So let's talk a little bit about resilience and resilience building. This is an interesting way of really looking at resilience, and it speaks about a network of relationships and how they can help you rebound from setbacks and how to identify the spheres that are most important to you. And really to take a look at it and see, maybe you're falling short in some of the categories. When you look at this, if the first one really speaks about empathy, connections, connections that are might be a little bit hard to see, but connections that help to foster empathy, connections that help to move things forward, connections with people in general. And I found that this is very useful when you're thinking about, typical sources of resilience. How do we build resilience? Well, really looking at connections, which we just mentioned. You can make good connections, and that's good relationships. Those relationships can be with family members. They can be with your team at work. They can be with friends, and friends are very important. Friends keep you on track. It's important to accept help and support from those who not only care about you, for those that listen to you and those that will listen to you. That helps to strengthen resilience. Other connections are some people find that being active in civic groups or faith-based organizations really help to strengthen resilience. Those are things that can provide social support and can serve to help reclaiming hope and to assist others in their time of need, can also benefit the helper. That's another way to make connections. The other thing is to avoid seeing crises as insurmountable problems. You can't change the fact that highly stressful events happen, but you can change how you interpret and respond to these events. So really to try looking beyond the present and how you interpret and respond, and really looking at future circumstances and knowing that things will be better. Note any subtle ways in which you might already feel better, and that helps to move you along and helps you to deal with difficult situations. And I guess the other thing that's really, truly important is to accept that change is part of living. So I'd like for us all to take a deep breath. And we're going to do an exercise on breathing to the count of 4. And so inhale to the count of 4. Hold the air in your lungs to the count of 4. Exhale to the count of 4. And hold for 4. This is a source that I found on Thrive Global, which is really very useful app that I have downloaded, and lots of great resources and sources available. What's important about taking a deep breath and taking a few minutes to slow down and to close your eyes and to try some deep breathing exercises, it's a really simple way to recharge in the moment, and you harness the power of your breath. And it's amazing how bringing attention to the rising and falling of your breath can move you from feeling stressed and overwhelmed to feeling relaxed and to being present. Now, evidence supports and validates this ancient wisdom. There are traditions that range from Hinduism, Buddhism, and even the ancient Greeks and yoga masters have claimed that conscious breathing can reduce anxiety. It can help to improve focus. It can help to improve our ability to manage stress. Neuroscience shows that we can course correct from stress in just 60 to 90 seconds. And conscious breathing is one of the most effective tools available. The most stress-relieving component of deep breathing is exhaling. When we exhale, our parasympathetic nervous system is activated, releasing the neurotransmitter acetylcholine, which slows down the heart rate and brings us back to a balanced state. Conscious breathing allows you to slow down the amygdala hijack. That can happen when you're in the midst of a fight or flight or fight moment. And box breathing or square breathing is really a simple stress management technique. And in fact, it's actually practiced by the Navy SEALs. And it activates our parasympathetic nervous system and lowers our stress. It's something that I find very, very helpful, and something that I try to incorporate into my daily practice, or if I think that I'm going to embark on something that's going to be a stressful situation, even before I go into the dentist. But anything like that, I really do my utmost to breathe, take my time, and sort of center myself. So reflection. Reflection is really very important, and it has been correlated with building resilience. There's many ways to do this. I noticed throughout COVID, a lot of people did reflective journaling. A lot of people did video journals, and some of the staff that I worked with actually did that, and they were so meaningful, and it was in the time, and I think if they go back and look at them later, it'll be really a sharing experience and a learning experience. And debriefing. So what you really do is you want to describe the experience of the event. You want to express what your reaction is to what happened, and you want to identify lessons learned. And you also really, when you tell the story, you want to tell the story of what happened and as objectively as possible, and really trying to stick to the facts and document what your reaction was. How did you respond, and what did you feel, and what were you thinking, and what you learned, as I said, and is there a pattern in the way that you react to things? And what would you do differently if the event occurred again? So this resource comes from the Center for Creative Leadership, and that's Nick Petrie and Derek Roger. And Nick Petrie works for the Center for Creative Leadership, and Derek Roger is a psychologist. And they have a couple of publications out. And one of the other things that they strongly stress is to wake up and live in the present moment. You know, quiet your mind by concentrating what's immediately in front of you. Forget about the past. Don't worry about the future. Focus on the things that you have immediate control over now. And ask yourself the question, what is the opportunity right in front of me now? They speak about controlling your attention and to become aware of the difference between pressure from maybe external demands that are being placed on you and the stress of ruminating about the demands. And that's one thing that I try to focus on, is not to ruminate on things because you get so caught up in it. The other thing is to accept that reality, that pressure is part of life, but stress does not necessarily need to be. And to really focus on what you can control in this situation, to become reflective about your work, to acknowledge that your recall of events may not be accurate, but to remain flexible. The other thing that they strongly suggest is to detach yourself, and that detachment will allow you to gain perspective and to focus on what you value most. The other thing is to that I've found helpful in the readings and in their readings is really that catastrophic size to catastrophes. Stuck on that word there. And what is funny in the situation, trying to find humor, and humor is often really associated with resilience. And those of you know that nurses have a very strange sense of humor from time to time, but that's what helps us survive. And it's what helps us to get through stressful situations sometimes, really trying to see the humor in things. And then let go. Believe that change is continuous and a difficult situation can lead to greater growth. Let go of your grudges and forgive quickly. So that's really what I have found very helpful and what I have seen to benefit staff that I have had the great pleasure and privilege of working with. And I actually enjoyed when they shared their reflective journaling and when they shared their video journals, and really find a lot of relevance in debriefing after a stressful situation at work. Okay, let's talk about characteristics that support resilience in the workplace. Now, the literature has shown us that extroversion, openness, agreeableness, conscientiousness, I mentioned humor, altruism, and adeptness at facing fears are all, and being optimistic, are all good characteristics that support resiliency. I mentioned before about social support, but teamwork is really important. Situational awareness, encourage the use of a timeout and encourage amongst yourself or amongst your staff or amongst your colleagues how to help each other. Also, professional competence, aiming for certification, feeling more competent in what you're doing, being engaged. Those are all things that help to foster resilience. Additionally, we found that mindfulness, workshops to develop critical thinking have been very, very helpful. Building hardiness, and I'll speak about hardiness in a minute, that aids in the development and strengthening of personal resilience. And a lot of work was done by the Association of Critical Care Nurses and looking at the importance of positive healthcare and ANA, looking at the positive healthcare work environment. So we spent a lot of time doing that. So it's really important to look at that and to look at measures in terms of professional governance and what we can do to foster that in our work environment. So hardiness. This is a tool that my colleague Mary Joy Garcia-Dia and myself have worked on. And hardiness is a personality characteristic. It's composed of control, commitment, and challenge. And what we found from doing some research and really use this acronym of hardiness is the H is to have heart, it's to have compassion, not only for yourself, but for other team members. So really looking at heart and compassion. A, extremely important, ask for help. Nothing wrong with asking for help. R, remains means to remain true to yourself. D is for diet, and it's really by encouraging yourself, myself, to eat healthy, but your team members to eat healthy, looking at fruit, blueberries, things of that nature that help to improve your mental acuity, help to improve your diet, and really also fruit that's in season, vegetables, and to drink plenty of water. So looking at that as part of your diet. Nurture is to nurture yourself. It's important to care for yourself and to build a reserve so you can care for others. Very important to do that. E is for exercise. S is for sleep and to have adequate sleep. And S is also to smile, laugh, be cheerful. The major focus of our hardiness program is really emphasizing how to build nurses' hardiness in nurses, how to help develop your own interpersonal strengths, and how to use that to manage stress and to be as resourceful as possible. And also to draw strength from hardship, also to look at when you think about have a heart and you think about checking in on yourself, but checking in with others to support positive relationships. And we know that nurses are resilient. The literature supports that. We've seen that. What we need to do is to foster resilient environments, and this helps to do that, and helps to build on the resilient skills that we already have. Self-care and resilience. This is really one of the things that I learned from the American Holistic Nurses Association. We have the opportunity to have holistic nurse on, a couple of them on board, and really looking at self-care and resilience. And once again, just stressing that it's okay to take care of yourself. If we engage in holistic self-care activities, if we become fluent in self-assessment and conscious empowerment, really important. And self-care is a core value of holistic nursing. It's important that really to facilitate healing within others, that we must undertake healing within ourselves. Another thing that I learned, and I don't think that we really have enough time to do it, but I found it extremely helpful, is really guided imagery. And there is a beach guided imagery for resilience, and it's just fabulous, and it's something that you can easily do. And you can do it with your patients, you can do it with yourself, but I do feel that it is very helpful in terms of building blocks for resilience. Another helpful practice is that cultivating gratitude. It certainly has a lot of benefits. It reduces stress and anxiety. It certainly boosts your mood, and it can strengthen your immune system. And it's been known and associated to improve sleep. So starting a daily gratitude practice, and this is a nice quote, that enjoy the little things, for one day you may look back and realize they were the big things. One of the things that we've started is to have a gratitude jar, and often during our briefs in the morning, we share messages of gratitude for one another. It's really great at team building, but it's a good way to recognize people that you may not recognize in the moment, and how important that is to share how grateful you are and your level of gratitude. The other thing is to keep a gratitude journal. That has been shown to be very effective. And one of the things is to actually write down 3 things you're grateful for. And research suggests to do that before you go to bed at night, and to keep that journal and to reflect on that. Another thing that we did was we created a Lavender Lounge, and it was a space for staff to find respite, solace, quiet, healing, and a brief escape from the hectic pace. And it was another way to show gratitude and to help foster resilience. Lavender is healing. Lavender helps you sleep. Lavender is very, very comforting. But having a place where you could get away from the crowd for a few minutes, very, very helpful when you need some quiet time. And to know that you need time and have a place to go can be very, very beneficial. So recognition of each other. This is a strong recommendation that I would make. It fits in with creating a healthy work environment. Recognize not only what you do, but what your team members do. Fits in with gratitude. To celebrate the joy and meaning in what we do and the joy and meaning in our work and how important it is. To think about embedding resilience processes within our nursing workflow, the things that we do day in, day out, and within our workplace environment, to embed things such as gratitude, to embed team concepts, to embed celebrating the good things, and trying to see humor in what we do. I challenge you to pay this forward and around the world in 80 days and 80 ways to share gratitude in 80 seconds or less. So I challenge you to pay it forward. I think this is a really fun concept and something that we could have a lot of enjoyment out of by sharing gratitude, and you can do it in 80 seconds or less. So around the world in 80 ways of sharing, how you give thanks to one another and share your gratitude in 80 seconds or less, as I just said. So think about joining the journey and send a message of gratitude to a colleague, a friend, a mentor. And we challenge you to pay it forward and to share it with us at resiliencefornurses.org. And what I would like to do is to thank my team members. These are colleagues that I have met throughout my doctoral program and have worked on developing resilience and resilience initiatives and resilience research. And we have done some, as I said, some research on that. So I thank Dr. Mary Joy Garcia Dia. I thank Dr. Tatiana Marie Arglado, and I thank my mentor, Dr. Joyce Fitzpatrick. We met all at CASE during our doctoral program. And I open it up, I believe, to questions.
Yes, thank you, Dr. O'Flaherty. That was an excellent presentation. We truly appreciate you taking the time to share that information with us. As stated in the beginning of this webinar, please submit any questions through the chat feature, and I'll read the questions in the order in which they're received to Dr. O'Flaherty myself. I think we might have actually received one already. Let's see. Okay. Question from Shelley. She said, I'm concerned about the younger workers. The skills that help with resilience aren't common in this generation. What can we do to support the younger workers?
Well, I think some of the things that I've just shared would be very helpful. One is situational awareness and checking in with people throughout the day. It is very helpful to pause, take a look at what's going on if you're in a unit or if you're in whatever the setting is, and to check in with everybody and see how they're doing. I certainly think, you know, the focus around hardiness and making sure people get rest and are compassionate not only for themselves but for each other. Sleep and a good diet is helpful. But if you are at work really doing things to create a healthy work environment and staying optimistic can help to foster resilience in your team members. I hope that's been helpful.
Yes, Shelley said thank you. Got another question from Margaret. She said, what can leaders do to promote skills in resilience capacity?
Really looking at the workplace environment and to role model resilience, to role model optimism, to role model checking in with your staff, to recognize people for what they do and to thank them, but to also recognize the great goodness that takes place and the great goodness that we can make in terms of nurses and our contributions. I think all of those are things that can foster a healthy work environment. As a leader, making sure that your team has enough time to take a break, making sure that, most of the time they don't necessarily, you can bring a bunch of bananas to the unit, but they're really going to want the chocolate chip cookies or insomnia cookies or things like that. So you try to keep them on a healthy track, but, bottled water or just, you look like you need a break right now. What can I do that would be the most helpful thing for you? So things that you can do to support the environment would be what I would recommend. And to be authentic in your role. It's okay to say that you're feeling stressed too. That it's really important to acknowledge that within yourself. And sometimes you have to share that so other people understand, it's okay to be afraid. It's okay to this is a tough day. This is not easy for me either. And just to acknowledge that.
Great, great. Looks like we're still, some people are still typing in the chat. Feel free, everybody, if you have any questions, just type them up in the chat and I'll read them to Dr. O'Flaherty. Okay, I see typing. Does anyone else have any other questions? I have a question for you then.
Sure, please ask.
So I saw, I know, I really enjoyed the exercises that you shared with us. The one that we had to go a bit quicker through, the imagery exercises with the beach. I was just curious, I could just search that online and I can find information on the imagery exercises you were referencing?
I can certainly share it with you. It's not a problem. It is from the American Holistic Nurses Association, and it's beach guided imagery for resilience. So I can certainly do that. A lot of this is in our resiliencefornurses.org. Some of these articles are there, but I'm happy to share that as it was shared with me. So I can definitely do that, make it
Awesome.
available.
Thank you.
It doesn't take that long to do, but I didn't know if we'd have enough time.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Let's see. Margaret, she has another question for you.
Sure.
She said, I have mixed feelings about sharing with my team that I'm stressed or feeling overwhelmed. Can you give examples of how you do this and their reactions?
I've done it a lot. I think I've probably done it more during COVID because we were really in such a tough situation. But I've also done it after, more after events, after a code or an unanticipated code. And sometimes if it's having to speak with a family member and I've shared how stressful, I'm actually a little apprehensive about doing this. I want to make them feel comfortable. So I've shared that, and my feedback afterwards is that they've really appreciated. Sometimes, as the leader, I am a nurse leader, as we all are as nurses. They don't, expect you to necessarily say that you're having a tough time with something, but it is important to share that. Look, what we do is not easy. There's no question about it. When you're dealing with people at the most vulnerable time of their life, and I don't know everything, and so I've often done that, and I think it's made them feel more comfortable. And also, I've said, look, this is what I think I might say. Should I say that, or how would you say that? And just ask for feedback with with other managers if I feel I need to coach somebody. So I've been as honest and open as possible, and I think that's served me well.
Great advice. We got another question from Kim. She said, excellent presentation. If you wanted to create a toolkit, what would you suggest as a checklist?
Well, actually, that's a really good question. As a checklist, I think I would look at some of the things that the literature supports to be the most effective. So whether you do a mindfulness moment, a lot of publications now on gratitude. So looking at, putting those things in your toolkit. I do think the benefit of the breathing exercises are very helpful. I would also put that in a toolkit. It's a good suggestion for me. Maybe I need to develop one. So I'll have to go back to the drawing board with that. But those would be things that I could think of off the top of my head that might be helpful. And it would really be based on what I've read in the literature as things that work.
Okay, looks like we got a few more people typing right now. Margaret said thank you for your perspective on her question about reactions and how to share your feelings with your team. Let's see. Okay, Kim said, sounds like a great addition. Thank you for your suggestions. A few more people are typing now. Dr. Janine Santelli typed in, thank you so much for taking the time to give this great presentation for ANA New York.
Oh, it was my pleasure. It's a topic that is near and dear to my heart, so I'm happy to be able to share anything about resilience. It's so important, and it's important to be optimistic.
Absolutely. We got another question from
Sure.
Shelley. She said, I support debriefing out of the ordinary situations. I'm familiar with Jeff Mitchell's critical incident stress management program. Do you have a format you follow for debriefing?
It depends on the situation, but I really look at team steps philosophy. They actually have some good debriefing tools. That is pretty much what I'm used to using. And then, based on the event, there might be something that might be more focused towards that, towards the event itself.
Okay, looks like we got a few more messages here. Sion said, thank you, my dear colleague, for sharing your knowledge. And Shelley said, thank you, I will look that up.
My pleasure.
Does anybody else have any more questions? I don't see any more typing in the chat, but leave it open for another minute.
Well, I hope that you take the challenge around the world in 80 ways of sharing.
Any other questions? Going once, twice? Okay, well, I would say thank you again, Dr. O'Flaherty. It's been a pleasure. It was a great presentation, and I truly appreciated your time.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to share resilience with everyone. Thank you. Have a good day and stay safe and stay hopeful.
Thank you as well. Bye-bye.
Bye.